How to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Diamonds. I've been training and dieting for 8 years. In that time, I've successfully been able to build muscle and lose fat simultaneously, and I did that twice using a science-based approach, once in 2018 and the second time more recently in 2022. October 23rd, 2021 was the last time I ever stepped on stage and the best I've ever looked by far. Fast forward to February 9th, 2022, and I'm admitted into hospital and prepped for surgery. Through prep, I'd been suffering with grade 4 irreducible hemorrhoids. Without going into the detail, there's swollen prolapsed veins in your lower rectum and anus. The moment I stepped off stage, I was bedridden for 5 months leading up to the full recovery that I made. No walking, only to the toilet and back to bed. No physical training, and as you can imagine, I gained tons of weight. As a detrained athlete, I'm primed to build a lot of muscle very quickly due to a phenomenon called muscle memory. I started at 202 pounds and I'm currently sitting at 101.8 pounds, and I've lost a total of 20.2 pounds of fat and regained all my muscle tissue at the same time. Over the past 2 years, I've been working with my coach, Cliff Wilson, and together we'll go through the science of losing fat and building muscle at the same time. But before we dive in, a lot of research and editing goes into making a video like this. Just do me one favor, if you wouldn't mind, gently hit the like button. It'd be greatly appreciated. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're new. Let's kick it off. In your opinion, who would you categorize as being able to build muscle and lose fat at the same time?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, and it's a common one, right? Because everybody wants those two things. I would say in the early going of someone's training career, they can do both. You can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Or, as you said, if somebody's coming from an extended layoff, once you get past a couple years of training, you're probably gonna have to choose. Do I wanna build muscle right now, or do I wanna lose fat? And people hate hearing that they have to choose. And one thing I've found though is so many people try to cheat the system. You know, they don't like hearing that, so they don't hear it. So they try to cheat the system. And you know, I think that sometimes people always think, well, I want things fast and now. And then when they try to cheat the system, they try to do both. And the problem is when you try to do both, you do neither. Really, you pretty much just stay where you're at. So the people that think, oh well, I want it now, I want it fast, are usually the ones that end up making the least amount of progress. So you can recomposition in the early goings of your training career, but in the latter parts of your career, I would even say past 2 years of training experience, you should probably start to choose growth phases and fat loss phases.
Is there a way to say, okay, I've grown this year? What would you say are the best tools to be able to gauge your overall progress, be that you want to build muscle or lose fat? What tools would you say, hey, this is what I'd rank the top tools to be able to track your progress?
I mean, really photos. Photos are your best tool. So I'm much like a lot of people out there. I'm really data driven. I'm a data driven person, and you will drive yourself insane trying to put numbers to your progress, because there's no accurate accurate method of measuring this stuff. And everybody always says, oh, I'll take my body fat. Body fat testing is wildly inaccurate. I mean, just wildly inaccurate. It's the margin of error, even on the DEXA scan, right? The DEXA scan is the gold standard of body fat testing. It's what they use in like university studies. Still has a margin of error, something about 5%. And depending on if you are hydrated or not hydrated, or carved up or not carved up, have you had sodium, have you not had sodium? So, you could build a lot of. I could take you into a DEXA scan today, test you, and then I could probably get it to show that you have 5 extra pounds of lean tissue tomorrow. Pictures are going to be your best method of measuring progress. It's what I do with my clients. Body fat testing is useful, but it's usually useful at looking at populations, right? Population, data trends, but not really like for an individual. That's where it's going to be most effective, is for groups of people.
If you could just sum it up quickly, how accurate would you say the weight scale is, or a good of a tool to measure?
Oh, and once again, the weight, it should really just be used if you're using it for fat loss purposes to gauge your fat loss. Once again, you're looking at data trends, not any individual scale, but because day to day, your weight can fluctuate 2-3 pounds easily. The best thing that people can do is not worry about the outcome as much. I know that sounds crazy because this is why we're doing it, is the outcome, but especially not worry about the speed of the outcome. I try to get my clients very process focused. And so what I always say is, we do what needs to be done, right? You know what produces results. At the end of the day, most of us know what produces results. And so we need to put all of our energy into what produces results. Our body will progress as fast as it can. You know what I mean? And that's gonna be a little bit different for everybody. Everybody has different genetics. Some people will grow muscle faster, some people will lose fat faster. But at the end of the day, you have to do what you know produces the best results, and then let your body do its thing,
The weight scale is a blunt instrument. It's very easy to manipulate. You could have just not gone to the toilet at the same regularity as before and see your weight go up, or you might have not had enough sleep. Your cortisol could be up. There's so many factors that can fluctuate your weight scale. And even for myself, in the beginning of my recomposition, for about a month, I was stuck at 202 pounds and I couldn't understand why. But what could have been happening is I could have been losing 1 pound of fat tissue and gaining 1 pound of muscle, keeping my weight scale the same. And that can discourage people, especially when they're not seeing results. And that also happens with sticking points throughout weight loss. There's so many factors to take in. And this is why myself and Cliff both use photos. We use photos to compare, because the photos won't lie to you, and see if you're truly making progress. So if you're going through your own journey, rather rely on your photos and maybe have someone objectively tell you if you're making progress or not. And you just want to use your weight scale as a general trend. Maybe checking yourself once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, or once a month, to be able to see if you're trending in the right direction and if your photos agree with those. Now, as we do understand that macros is different for everyone, but if you could recommend the best macro split for someone who is seeking body recomposition, what would that look like?
So I would say the best macro split would be individual, but if I had to give the most generalized one that I think most people could make progress on, then the most general I would say would be to have a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Most people between 45 and 60 grams of fat, and then carbs adjust up or down based on your goals. Gotcha. If you're trying to gain weight, then continue to add carbs until you start gaining. If you're trying to lose weight, continue to cut carbs away until you start losing. I know that seems really, I say that's like the most generalized, and
general way,
I put out this very wide range.
Is ingesting or eating a lot of protein harmful? I get that question quite a lot. They're like, that's too much protein. Can it be harmful? In that 1 gram as being the average, what would you, and especially for recomposition, what would you consider the upper limit and the lower limit of protein intake if you're seeking recomposition?
Protein, first off, as long as you are healthy and you have healthy kidneys, there's no harm in consuming higher protein levels. Study after study has showed that there is no harm in it. An interesting study by Jose Antonio showed that people were eating, extremely high intakes of protein, 350 grams a day, and there was no negative effects on their kidneys after a year. And one of my clients at one point, just as a test, we were feeding him like 500 grams of protein, and he was a researcher, and so he was just testing his kidney levels, and everything was fine even after 10 weeks of 500 grams of protein. And so no negative effects whatsoever. I do give my clients higher protein intakes than a gram of protein per pound body weight. There is some research that shows that going a bit higher than a gram of protein per pound of body weight can be beneficial for muscle growth, but it's kind of in relation to the entire diet, because if protein continues to raise, then you have to watch your total caloric intake very carefully to make sure it doesn't get too high. So if somebody can't handle a lot of calories, I won't give them 250 grams of protein, because then their carbohydrates are going to have to be at 100 grams. And so that's not really feasible to continue to carry out over the long term, if that makes sense. I would honestly list a gram of protein per pound of body weight as the minimum for me, truthfully.
The general population is so afraid of carbs. How would you be able to express how the importance of carbs in a diet, especially with the goal of a fat loss or recomposition, or in general, how important is carbs in a transformation?
Yeah, carbs have definitely gotten a bad name in the last decade or so here. The reason, so one of the arguments that a lot of times people will give is that there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, right? What they mean by that is that you need protein to live and survive, and you need fat to live and survive. But you could live the rest of your life and not have carbohydrates. You'd survive. But we're not just trying to survive here, we're trying to thrive. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? You optimize, and carbohydrates are the ideal fuel source for your working muscle tissue. Right there, that should tell you everything that you need. If you want to actually train as hard as you possibly can, carbohydrates have to be in your diet. And as far as fat loss goes, calories are all that matter for fat loss. I could give somebody a set of macronutrients that are completely wrong for their body, but they'd still lose fat, assuming the caloric intake is appropriate. I can give someone a diet that is very low in protein, very low in fat, and very high in carbs. And assuming the caloric intake is still where it needs to be, they're still gonna lose fat. So this is actually a story from a long time ago, around like 2012. And I had a client win a bodybuilding show one time. He turned pro, and he said, "It's awesome that I did this having mostly just chicken breast, whey protein, and Cocoa Puffs." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "I just wanted to see if I could do it." And he ate nothing but chicken breast, whey protein, and Cocoa Puffs. And I believe he put like oil on his chicken breast to hit his fat numbers or something like that.
Incredible.
But caloric intake was appropriate. He looked great. Not the healthiest thing in the world, but fat loss comes down to caloric intake for the most part. You can make short-term progress in that manner, having junkier foods or whatever. But if you want to look at long-term, you really need to consider the health aspect. For example, fruits and vegetables contain a lot of phytochemicals, a lot of which we don't even really know everything they do for us yet. But some of them have been shown to optimize our hormone levels, help with recovery, reduce inflammation, which over the long run is going to have a huge impact on our training and our recovery and our fat loss. If you're eating 80 to 90% unprocessed or minimally processed foods, fruits and vegetables, the last 10 to 20% can come from some junkier foods. At the end of the day, I'll have a bowl of ice cream or, something like that, or, a cupcake or something like that works within my numbers, but I've had my base of healthy foods first.
So there are two massive things that I've seen have changed with my overall physique and my overall macros. Number one is the amount of protein that I've eaten. One thing that's changed tremendously is that I feel very satiated on my diet. Once I was able to up my protein overall, I was really able to say, hey, I can do this consistently. And when I do that with my clients, I always ask them at the end of our 16-week journey, hey, do you feel hungry? And there may be instances, but they feel that they can generally continue with their diet for the long term because the protein keeps them so satiated. And the second thing with carbs, I remember being very afraid of eating 300 grams of carbs. But the truth is, when I was able to match my performance with the amount of carbs I was eating, I was able to increase my overall strength, maintain or even build more muscle tissue, and I look so much better. The idea is you want to utilize your carbs as a tool. Utilize that as your primary fuel source, and I do this with my clients as well. Once they get over that fear with carbs because it's been so demonized, they see amazing results. So I totally agree here. We want to follow those two things and have fats at a number that is maintainable and that's healthy for hormonal reasons. So I wanted to also touch on, just briefly, is training. And what would your recommendation be in terms of the frequency? So how many times a person would choose to train in a week, the number of sets, and another common question is, what rep range do I choose to be able to build muscle, right? Because when you're in the gym, that's your primary focus.
I think most people are going to do best with 4 to 5 days a week of training. I know so many people come to me. a lot of people, by the time they get to me, they've been serious training for a long time, or they've competed in several shows already. And I get a lot of people that are like, I train 6 days a week, I train 7 days a week. I really haven't met anybody that can train 6 or 7 days a week and train hard. Yeah, it really starts to wear on people over time, and they don't realize it, right, until they go back to 5 days a week and they're like, wow, I wasn't really training as hard as I should. And the funny thing is, I work with mostly natural bodybuilders, but I do work with some enhanced competitors. Even my competitors that are on performance enhancing drugs, they can't even handle 6 days a week. And performance enhancing drugs vastly improve your recovery. 6 days a week is pretty brutal. 4 days a week, you can get a lot done. I still think 5 is about ideal. Yeah, you want to train each muscle group 1 to 2 times a week. What I usually recommend to people is at the earlier part of your training career, you can train each muscle group 2 to 3 times a week, and then probably progress to 2. And then towards the end, maybe sometimes every once in a while do 1 to 2 times per week. The farther along in your career you progress, the greater stimulus you need in one session to really stimulate muscle tissue. So, I think you need to start reducing the frequency a little bit. Sets and reps. This is where we really get into the weeds with a lot more individuality here, because recovery ability can differ greatly between people. If you want the safest rep range, like safest meaning you're gonna build muscle for sure, 8 to 12 reps per set. But there's a lot of benefit in variety. I would really recommend a good wide rep range of 6 reps to 20 reps. Now that seems really, really vast, but you can do some sets in the 6 to 8 rep range, another in the 10 to 12, another in the 15 to 20 in that regard. Because low reps and high reps will sometimes, they'll build muscle through different avenues. Some of it more by tension and others by metabolic stress. And so the high reps will do more metabolic stress, the low reps more through tension and load and muscular damage. But the middle range, I say 10 to 12, 8 to 12 reps, it's because you're going to get a little bit of all of that, right? Now, as far as the number of sets, I think you're going to, if you want to get the most bang for your buck, I'm going to say 10 sets per muscle group per week. Split that up however you will across your split. Now, I think that as you continue to train more, up to 12 sets, 15 sets or more, the research does show, and my experience shows me that you'll still continue to grow, but it's not always like, it's real linear up to 10 sets, right? You add more sets, you grow more. You add more sets, you grow more. As you get past 10 sets per week, you add a set, you grow a little bit more. You add, another set, you grow a little bit more, and it just kind of tapers off. You know what I mean? Until eventually, if you cross your individual threshold, then you'll actually start to decline. Yeah, I'll even do 20 to 30 reps. And so sometimes people will question why I do that, because the research does show you don't build as much muscle with 20 to 30 reps as you do with, say, 10 to 12. So sometimes people are like, why do you even bother? But once again, I always have the long game in mind. My thought behind this is that, so when you're doing a 20 rep set, a 30 rep set, it's a lot of repetition, of course, repeating. And then the other thing is that research does show that the heavier a load is, the less control you have over what muscle is doing the lifting. So the heavier that load is, say I'm doing a bench press, my chest is my weakest muscle group. So if I'm doing a set of 6 on the bench press, that's a heavy load, fairly heavy load. I don't naturally activate my pecs very easily. So what is going to happen is that the heavier the load, the more my nervous system is going to defer to its natural inclinations. And natural inclinations means I'm going to bench press that largely with my triceps and my front delts. But then the lighter the load gets, if I do a 20 rep set, the more I get to choose what muscle group is doing the lifting, which means I can do a 20 rep set of bench press and I can choose to activate it with my pecs. I've seemed to notice that over time, when you do those higher rep sets, it eventually trains you, develop some neural coordination to be able to activate at the heavier loads then. So when people have a weaker muscle group, I try to put in higher reps to develop that neural coordination, and then hopefully pay dividend to the heavier loads later.
In your opinion, Cliff, top 3 supplements to build muscle and lose fat?
Number 1, creatine. Creatine monohydrate. Don't go for other forms of creatine. There's a lot of, creatine citrate and creatine ethyl ester. They are always more expensive and sometimes less effective. And so regular, boring creatine monohydrate, 5 grams a day. And research is showing it actually has a whole host of health benefits. It's great for preventing mental decline, and it's just so many good things. Protein powder for convenience. Protein powder, whey protein, casein protein, bring it with you, easy, right? And the last one I'm going to put, caffeine. Caffeine is a great, who doesn't love caffeine? It's a performance enhancer. It's great for fat loss. I think you gotta pick your dosages. It seems like some people are like, no, caffeine's bad, and other people are like, yeah, caffeine's good, so they consume 700 milligrams a day. I think a good range of caffeine is going to be anywhere from maybe 100 milligrams to 400 milligrams a day. There's a lot of research that shows, people who drink coffee regularly have lower rates of mortality. They live longer. They have sharper minds into older age. And once again, and it's right, caffeine feels good. You know what I mean? So I'll put caffeine as my last one.
Best cardio to build muscle and to lose fat.
So if you are just dropping a little bit of body fat for a general population person, right? I think using high intensity interval training, HIIT cardio, is very useful. It is shown that over a 24-hour period, HIIT is going to burn the most amount of fat. So I think that is effective. But for competitive bodybuilders, people with getting into lower body fat levels, I think you need to go the opposite, and you need to go low intensity, steady state, go for a walk. The reason being that HIIT cardio is so taxing, and for somebody that is already pushing their recovery levels to the limit when you're weight training, right? Somebody that's weight training with everything they have day in and day out, week in and week out. If you want to add HIIT on top of that, you're going to get spent really quickly. And it's going to rob your primary fuel source for your training, which is glucose. So I think if you're really pushing the limits with weights, you need to go the opposite end and go low intensity, steady state, like going for a walk, because the primary fuel source for that is body fat. Doesn't take much recovery to go for a walk, right? You don't have to get yourself mentally primed to go for a walk. So if you're really pushing the limits with weights, go for low intensity, steady state. 30-minute walk is no big deal. It increases your caloric output without digging into your recovery ability. But if you're only training 4 days a week, go for some HIIT.
And this is exactly why I push my clients to walk. Their likelihood of being successful and also to be able to maintain this form of cardio lifelong is very high, versus telling them to do a strict number of sessions of HIIT or to play a particular sport. Walking you can do anywhere. It's easy to do with any members of your family. And this is why I love walking as the primary source of cardio. And I know that this can be done year round because you're walking already. It's just about how much. And I'll leave the video here. First, again, I want to thank Cliff for taking his time and recording this video with me. Please follow him on all socials. He's such a great source of information. He's been a great mentor and coach to me. So if you're more so on the professional side, you can be able to go to his website and reach out to him. However, if you're looking to work with me on a one-on-one basis, you want me to take you through the entire guide, I'm showing you on the pictures some of the busy professionals that I work with. They thought it would be impossible. Doctors who thought it would be impossible to see the results. People who work in accounting, finance, CEOs, a lot of guys who felt that, hey, Mike, it's impossible for me. I have a family. I don't have the time. And maybe they think that because of their age, they can't see results. I highly recommend, if you've tried everything, you need that help, reach out to me. You can go through my application down below and I will reach out to you and we'll jump on a one-on-one call and get you started. But I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Hit the video with a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and before I forget, of course, the giveaway. So comment down below what you enjoyed the most about the video, and also hit it with a like and be subscribed. And I'll be choosing a winner in the comments. I'll pick 2 for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.